All right, so we know the Panthers are back in action tonight. I got a good rate of going to Panther games so far this year. I've been to 3 games. I'm 2-1. All right, me and my son, my 11-year-old Jordan, we're Panther buddies. He is way into the Panthers now, which is so fun for me. And yesterday was also a big day in the history of the Miami Marlins. So we bring aboard for her return slash debut on ZASLOW Show 2.0. Our friend is Jessica Blaylock, Bally Sports, Florida. So this is new, Jess, because I've been having you on my show for years now. And see, I've been getting messages from people. Hey, Zaslow, you know, the interviews you're doing, even though they're with people who you've had on the show before, they've been so good. And I'm like, yeah, I'm realizing that it's so much easier talking to people when you could see each other. So this is new and this is fun.
I know. I really like this. First off, I love that we're reunited. And I totally feel you on the being able to actually see someone when you speak to them, because it drove home all over again during COVID how important that was, because we were interviewing guys through, Zooms or looking into a camera that was in the stands where they were on the field, and you couldn't see their facial cues and you couldn't really react off of what they were saying, what they were doing. And you forget how nice it is to really just be able to look at somebody face to face and have a conversation. Yeah. But ultimately, overall, I love that we're getting to catch up again, because I always loved coming on with you, especially the fact that we'd be like, okay, we're going to talk about Panthers and Marlins. And then inevitably we'd have a conversation about like our top favorite bands of all time. And It was great.
Well, so this is the first time I've spoken to you in a couple of months, obviously. Have we seen any good shows recently?
You know what? I think the last show that I saw was the Black Crowes. I really
so good.
Go see Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah.
But we had a hockey game that night. So unfortunately, that didn't work out. I think the next show that I'm thinking about going to is actually in December at Hard Rock, the Jason Bonham Led Zeppelin.
That's probably fun. Like he's done a bunch of those shows, and I've never made it out. That's probably fun.
I've seen them before. And so I'm thinking about going again, because obviously it's the closest I'll ever get to seeing Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen them before, then I would definitely put that on your list.
I'm the same way, where it's like, I'm never going to see Led Zeppelin, and I'm never going to get over that. And it's funny that you mentioned Greta Van Fleet, who I want to see. I've never seen them. And I remember when Greta Van Fleet, when I was first introduced to them and they started to get some hype and whatnot, and people were critical of them because, they're a Led Zeppelin ripoff. They sound just like Led Zeppelin. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay. I'm like, okay, I wish every band sounded more like Led Zeppelin. Where is the problem here, right?
I completely agree. I'm like, the more they sound like Led Zeppelin, the better, because so much music these days is just terrible. Just terrible. So, hey, if Greta Van Fleet wants to literally mimic Led Zeppelin to the T, more power to them. I'm going to listen.
I want someone to point me in the direction of all the bands out there that sound like Led Zeppelin. That's my starting point. I want you to show me all the bands who sound like Led Zeppelin, and I'm going to listen to them. This is not bad.
No, I'm with you. And that's also why I have a bone to pick with Pandora. You put on Led Zeppelin as your station, and like, for whatever reason, like 5 songs later, they're playing like a live version of Taylor Swift. And I'm like, how did we go from Zeppelin to being a Swiftie? And I have no problem with Taylor Swift. I got a lot of her on my running mix. But when I put on a Led Zeppelin station, I want to hear Zeppelin. I want to hear Pink Floyd. I want to hear AC/DC, the Beatles, maybe. Like, the connections that the Pandora station sometimes draw make absolutely no sense to me.
It's so funny, we'll
both do the research together to find the Zeppelin sound alike, look like bands.
You know which Pandora station is really great? Actually, my wife and I, we love the Counting Crows Pandora station. Not because we necessarily love Counting Crows, because they're fine. Okay, I've seen them live. It's one of the worst live shows I've ever seen. Counting Crows are fine.
Really?
Especially August and Everything After. It's a great album. But the Counting Crows Pandora channel is awesome because the other bands that they mix in, it's all the the 90s like it's some 90s alternative, it's 90s college music. Like, it's the Counting Crows channel is great, Jessica.
All right, I'm gonna have to check that out. I bet they mixed in some Grateful Dead too, because the Counting Crows actually did a fantastic cover of a Grateful Dead song, and I'm blanking on the name right now. It'll come to me, but I wonder if they mixed in some Grateful Dead.
Okay. All right. I like getting it started with a little bit of music here on a Thursday. I like this. All right. We'll get to Panthers in a second here.
Friend of the Devil. Friend of the Devil. The Counting Crows do a great cover of Friend of the Devil.
So we'll get to some Panthers coming up in a second. And but first, I want to talk to you. It was an historic day yesterday for the Marlins. Sandy Alcantara, first ever Marlins pitcher to win Cy Young. They've had a couple of guys who've been in the conversation before. Jose Fernandez obviously had been in the conversation. Dontrelle Willis had been in the conversation before. But Sandy Alcantara, first Marlin ever to win Cy Young, and he did it unanimous. Was that a surprise that it was unanimous, Jessica?
I don't think it was a surprise at all. In fact, I think it was relief, because I think sometimes we see these players in South Florida putting together special seasons, and you're just afraid that they're almost going to go unnoticed or unrecognized, because sometimes teams like the Panthers and teams like the Marlins kind of seem to be on the back burner for their respective leagues. And I think the thing that stood out to me was that it was unanimous, and it made me so happy that not only did we recognize what a special season Sandy put together, but league-wide, people recognized and respected it and acknowledged it. So I think the one thing that I loved most about Sandy winning the Cy Young was that it was a unanimous decision. And it was absolutely the right decision. And, did Julio Urias and Max Fried deserve to be finalists? Absolutely. They put together great seasons as well. But what Sandy did was on such another level, especially considering the innings pitched. And I think that, to me, is one thing I always come back to, is the fact that Sandy's numbers are even more impressive. Sure, maybe he didn't have the lowest ERA in the National League like Julio Urias. Maybe he didn't finish, in all the top 5 categories that Fried did. But guess what? Sandy took on about 5 to 6 more starts and opened himself up that much more to giving up hits and giving up runs and giving up home runs and having a higher ERA. And it just, to me, drives home how much more impressive Sandy's numbers were, because of the sheer number of times he opened himself up more to being vulnerable, to having worse numbers than he ended up having. So I love that he won it. I didn't think there was any doubt he was going to win it. And the fact that he won it unanimously was 100% the cherry on top.
It's super difficult to do what he did, considering he played for a bad team, and to still be able to put up that kind of production and still get that kind of respect. Now he's locked in, for the next 4 or 5 years. So, the Marlins got an extremely team-friendly deal with him. So that's fantastic. Does he appear, losing can, be grating. Does he appear to like it here?
Oh, I think so. I think that he and Pablo especially, I remember around the trade deadline, you could tell, especially with Pablo Lopez, that it was weighing on him as to whether or not he was going to stay here in Miami. And I think when the trade deadline came and went and he was still here, there was such a huge sense of relief for Pablo, but I think there was a sense of relief for Sandy too, because I think Sandy loves pitching with this rotation. I think he loves being here, especially with all of the culture and him being from the Dominican Republic. I think he absolutely loves working with Mel Stottlemyre Jr. So I think, every time you hear Sandy talk about pitching and being here, he truly talks about it with a passion, and that he is pitching for Miami and the Marlins and these fans. So to know that we're going to get the chance to continue to watch him for the next several years, oh my gosh, how much fun is this going to be? I mean, to know that this guy just unanimously won a Cy Young and still thinks he's just scratching the surface of his potential. I mean, buckle up your seatbelt and lock in, because Sandy has still got so much more to do, so much more to accomplish, and we're going to get a front row seat to it.
I'm having a great experience with the Panthers so far this year, Jessica. Now they're 9-6-1 tonight. They got Dallas. These next 2 home games on this homestand are very tough. Dallas off to a good start, and Saturday is going to be a really special, bittersweet kind of day because Jonathan Huberdeau makes his return, and I'm really looking forward to that. I'll ask you about that in a second, but I'm having a great experience so far with the Panthers because since I'm not working the Heat anymore, my schedule's a lot more open now. I can go out there to FLA Live Arena. I'm taking my son with me. We've been to 3 games so far this year. And my 11-year-old, my younger one, and he has really taken a liking to the Panthers and to hockey and learning about it. Now,
love it.
I'm not going to play dumb and not understand that, hey, this has a lot to do with, the team's good, and so the point that I'm trying to make is, for a Panther franchise that's in year number 30, I believe it is now, when you have some kind of sustained success, which they've never had since the very beginning of the franchise, the infancy years, this is how you attract the younger audience. If we're going back 7-8 years ago, my 11-year-old son is not going to be interested in going to these games and learning about everything. But right now, the team is awesome. They're coming off a great year. This, Jessica, is how you capture a generation of fans.
Yeah, I agree. And, it was such a fun season last year with them winning the President's Trophy and all the success that they had at home, making it to the second round of the playoffs for the first time since 1996. Brutal to run into the juggernaut that was the Tampa Bay Lightning once again last year. But, you come into this season and knowing some of the moves they made, including getting a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, who to me has been everything as advertised and who has completely endeared himself to the Panther fan base. I think there's a lot of optimism heading into this year, knowing that you are a team that is built to contend in the playoffs year in and year out. And to see all the pleasant surprises to start this season, the play of Brandon Montour, who was phenomenal stepping up with Aaron Ekblad getting hurt. Eetu Luostarinen, who is having such a tremendous start to the season, both offensively and defensively, and seems to be one of the most underrated players in the league that nobody really talks about. The continued growth of Gustav Forsling, the fact that, Barkov, Verhaeghe, Bennett, some of those guys, Reinhart had a really slow start to the season, but now they're getting going. So watch out for that. Sergei Bobrovsky was sensational the other night. With that 40 save performance. You've got a great balance between being able to play Bob and being able to call upon Spencer Knight. I mean, there are so many reasons to enjoy watching this Panthers team, and to think about the fact that really the first couple of weeks, the first month or so of the season was a lot about Paul Maurice getting to know these guys getting to know his system, trying to figure out what worked as far as line combinations. And so I think to have, the record that they do, to have, a spot currently in the playoffs, I know it's still early in the season, but to be in a playoff spot, I think you have to be really pleased with what you've seen overall from this team. And the fact that, I know last year one of the biggest differences was there were a lot more games that were blowouts. And I feel like every game this season has pretty much come down to the wire.
You think it's going to help them in the long run?
Or been a one-goal game. I absolutely do. I actually talked to Sam Bennett about that a couple of days ago at practice. I was like, last year by the All-Star break, we pretty much knew who the playoff teams were. It was really more you were playing for positioning at that point. This season, from one night to the next, you check the standings and a team that was second in the division because of one loss falls out of a playoff spot. Like, there is no room for error this year. There's no room for losing a couple of games in a row. The East in general, not just the Atlantic Division, but the East in general is brutal. And so, that's one thing Bennett and I were talking about, how basically he expects it to be like that the entire season, a fight for positioning, a fight for points. But that is only going to make teams, as cliche as it is to use the phrase battle tested, it really is going to make teams, much more battle tested for when a tough playoff push begins. So, I think it's definitely a good thing. And I think we've seen already early on this season that there are truly no easy nights, especially when you're playing in the division, especially when you're playing an opponent from the East.
Last thing for you, Jess. Jess is heading to morning skate. Panthers have the Stars tonight. Huberdeau is going to return. It's going to be his only visit to town this weekend. This Saturday, as the Flames are here. Do you know what the team may have planned? Are you guys for Bally? Like, have you requested to talk to him? Are you going to get some access to him? Do we know what's going on with Huberdeau for this weekend?
Yeah, and not just Huberdeau, but Mackenzie Weegar as well, who was a homegrown guy who underwent so much growth during his time with the Panthers and was so passionate about being here too. And Tkachuk facing Calgary for the first time. I mean, there's a lot of storylines going into Saturday. With it being a 4:00 game on Saturday, most likely neither team will have a morning skate. So we are going to practice tomorrow, not only for the Panthers to be able to talk to guys like Tkachuk and hopefully an Aaron Ekblad about seeing Weegs and Alexander Barkov, who, that relationship with Huberdeau for years was such a critical relationship. But we are going to stick around for Calgary's practice and hopefully talk to both Huberdeau and Weegar about returning as well. So yeah, Saturday is going to be a game filled with just a ton of emotion, and just remembering all of the wonderful moments that we got to experience with both Hubie and Weegs. I have no doubt that the team has something planned for both of them, to say thank you for all of their contributions over the years. And then I expect that game because, Hubie's going to be amped up. Weegar's going to be amped up. Tkachuk is certainly going to be amped up. I mean, I think that game is going to be a ton of fun on top of, kind of all the emotional ties into it as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Jess, excellent job. I enjoyed this. I like being able to see you now when we have you on the program.
So much fun. Let's do this again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jess. We'll have a great... Oh, tell everyone again tonight what time you start. What do we got going on tonight?
6:30 pregame show, 7:00 puck drop. If you can't make it to the game, be sure to tune in because tonight is Roberto Luongo night.
Oh, okay.
To honor him for being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame this weekend. So we're going to have a ton of stuff on Lou. Fingers crossed, maybe even the potential of catching up with him during the game. But either way, it's going to be a fun broadcast with a lot of cool elements to honor Roberto Luongo as well.
Great job, Jess. We'll be watching tonight from the ZASLOW Mansion family room. Thanks so much.
Love it. All right. Thanks, Zaz. Anytime for you.